Hey everyone, this is Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today with my friends from allfreeknitting.com, I'm here to share another fun dyeing video. And this time we are going to be dyeing wool roving that can later be spun into yarn. I have been fascinated with the different ways that you can color yarn, and dyeing the fibers before you actually start will give you just more ways that you can play with color. This is 100% wool, roving about 100 grams. And to start, just like you would prepare yarn for hand painting, we are going to soak it. I'm just going to, make sure you can see, kind of coil this up. My roving arrived, a bit broken, which is okay for our purposes because I'm not that great of a spinner. Okay, so I have this coiled up, and I'm going to set it aside while I prepare the wash bath. I have a bunch of water here, and as we know from watching my other tutorials, we will need, this is cold, just cold water. We have some white vinegar, and I am going to add 3 tablespoons to this bath. And stir it up. I'm not going to want to stir it at all while I'm dealing with the roving because I do not want to agitate the fibers. Because keep in mind, these are unspun fibers. Don't want anything to happen to it. Alright, now I'm going to take my coil and gently submerge it in the water. And when you're soaking, you need enough water, and the amount of acid that you add is something that you can experiment with. But I'm going to let this soak for about 30 minutes or so. And while that's soaking, let's come back over to our work surface, which you can see I've already covered with a layer of plastic wrap. Just like with hand painting yarn, we are eventually going to wrap up our roving in this plastic wrap to steam it in the microwave. So what else will we be needing in this tutorial? We're going to need a microwave safe plate. You're going to need some small containers to mix your dye. You're going to need an optional syringe for applying color, and of course you're going to need food coloring to be our color source. And finally, don't forget about protecting your hands with gloves as you apply the dye. So our roving has been soaking for 30 minutes, and it's now time to remove the excess water. I'm going to place my hand on top to keep the fibers from falling out, and I'm going to pour the excess water out of this container. And I'm going to gently pat the fiber a bit to remove a little more of the water. Alright, now it's time to take it out. Again, gently removing a little bit of the water. I don't want it totally saturated. And so you can arrange it on your table in many different ways if you want to make stripes, or you can even have a lot of fun and paint, like smiley faces and stars and all other kinds of designs. I have 3 different colors of dye back here. Each of these cups contain half a cup of water and 25 drops of dye. And I'm going to apply it to my yarn using the syringe. It's not yarn, roving. Sorry. And I am just going to start painting. I don't really have much of a plan here. I'm just going to have some fun painting, some fun stripes and stuff. You know, you don't have to use a syringe, you can pour. You will want to check, you know, to see if your dye has gone all the way. Can you see over there? Sorry, my hand has gone all the way through the fiber. Unless you want white spots, but frequently people tend to not care for white spots very much. And so when you're spinning the yarn, if you want to have larger sections of colors and more of a variegated colorway, then you'll want to make longer stripes of a color. But this is something that you'll need to play with, because different spinners, all working on the same exact, starting from identically dyed fiber, will come out with different results. It all depends on how you apply it and how you apply the yarn after it's spun, and there's many factors that go into what it looks like. But since I want kind of a mottled colorway, I'm adding my dye kind of sporadically around. Now, if you want to keep your colors, have less mixing between your colors, then having an extra container of water will come in handy. And as with hand-painted yarn, you know, the amount of white that you leave behind is entirely up to you. But, you know, a lot of spinners prefer yarns with less white, or in my case, tan. Can't remember if I already said this, but the amount of the dye that you can add to your fiber depends on how much water was left when you were done soaking the yarn. So you may very well end up having dye left over. This is a lot of fun. Alright, and then just, you know, like with hand painting yarn, you're going to want to squish it a bit. Let these colors move out over the fiber. And, you know, you can check then, and you can to see, you know, how, you know, much color there is. But this yarn was still pretty, or sorry, I keep calling the fiber yarn. The fiber was pretty wet still when I removed it. So I'm definitely not going to be able to add all my dyes to this 100-gram piece of fiber. But that's totally okay, because, you know, I can use it for another project. Oh, this is so fun! Alright, I'm going to add some more. I don't know what I'm going to make out of it. It depends on how it spins up. I don't have that much control over my spinning yet. So. But I have a feeling that because I've done such short repeats of stripes, that my yarn is going to end up, you know, sort of a semi-solid. But that's kind of what I want. I didn't really want a really crazy colorway. Let's peek. Yeah, the dye has spread pretty well. Yeah, but if I wanted to have a more variegated colorway, I would have done, you know, maybe blue in the middle right here, and then 2 big blocks of green on either side. The important thing is the method of application. All right, look at all this excess dye that I've got I'm gonna get to do more dyeing today. Oh, that actually sounds kind of bad. Huh. Okay. Alright, and so now we're ready to wrap up the yarn. And so, well, there's not that much excess water, but if you want to try to keep your colors from mixing, you can mop up any excess liquids with your paper towel and then wrap up the yarn with the saran wrap. The fiber. You may, depending on how big of an area it took up, you may need to add another layer of plastic wrap on top. But as you can see, I did not need that this time. Okay, and then we are just going to roll it up like some kind of jelly roll, or I think I said at one point, it's like kind of rolling up a sleeping bag without squishing it. Alright, now we've got our microwave safe plate. And, oh dear, losing liquid, and our roll of fiber is now on the plate. And then we bring it over to the microwave. And the plate is to catch any extra liquid that drips out. And some will drip out. And just like with hand painting fiber, we're going to heat this in 2-minute intervals until the roving is hot to touch, at which point we will let it cool down completely and then repeat the process once more. Alright, the roving is hot to touch, so I'm going to let it sit and cool for a bit. But I'm also going to take this opportunity with some paper towels to kind of soak up the excess liquid that has come out. It's not quite cool enough yet, but I have unrolled it and just kind of doubled it over a bit to help it cool down a bit faster before I can wash it. We're now ready to unwrap our roving. You want to do this carefully. Again, we don't want to agitate it. And you can kind of, well, I guess you can't see the sink. I have a container here with lukewarm water because we really don't want to agitate the fiber, and we want to keep it as still as possible. So I'm going to take it out and carefully transfer it into the bucket. You want to make sure that the wool has cooled completely before you start washing it, or else you could be shocking it, which could cause the fibers to felt. We're now in cool water, and not a lot of dye is coming out, which is good, which means that all the dye is in the fiber. So I'm going to continue rinsing as so, and then I'm going to lay it out on a cookie sheet to dry. I've laid my roving out to dry, and what's interesting are the colors. So you can see that there's some reds in it, but I did not have any red at all in any of my dye mixtures. What I had was black, and black is composed of multiple different colors. So we inadvertently ended up breaking black in here. There we have it, our dry, fluffy roving that we hand painted. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial from ChemKnits, brought to you by my friends at allfreeknitting.com. Happy spinning!